here is what I've done so far is that I used some of the two-part epoxy to get the initial bond between the two broken pieces. When I took the duct tape off, I didn't realize that it was hollow at points the way that it was plastic formed. Um, is it that's gonna there were some points where I could kind of get a good bond. Some points where it's hollow, so it was a little bit hard. So what I'm going to do is just first let me show you kind of what I have. Is it two-part epoxy? I get it off of Amazon. You can get it in stores, Amazon, eBay, all over the place. I buy because I use a lot of it. I'll buy like 6 packs at a time. It comes with these mixing tubes. It's kind of like a cylindrical needle um, that has these portions in it that force the two-part epoxy to mix. So you get a really good mix when you use these type of needles. It comes with 2 needles. Comes with a little cap. Um, is that it's capped off uh, with a seal. You got to twist and break to make it usable. Is that I use the trays basically as my little junk. That's the first needle I used. Once it gets hard, it it'll the one needle, you can't really reuse these. So if I don't use all of them, um, gonna hang up the phone. So if I don't use all of them, I always keep any extras. I'm going to end up using the two on this. Is that I'm going to use the bond, the epoxy, to create a good bond and also fill some of the space where these cracks are out. And the way that I'll do that is I'll take painter's tape is always a good option. It's inexpensive. It's generally easy to peel back off. So I'm going to go from the top. I'm going to utilize some, kind of put across the seam on the top. Is that I did a little bit in between where there was solid spacing, where the plastic was a solid piece, not as hollow at the crack. Um, and that way got it to bond. This was a little bit difficult to get lined up because it's not like a piece of wood or something where I could use a brace of some sort to brace it. So I was trying to hold it. I couldn't really hold it long enough to hold it still. The stuff I get is 5-minute epoxy. They have 5, 30, 45-minute, 90-minute. They have all kinds of difference. I tend to use the 5. If you're doing something that you really need to get it bonded quick, kind of like the way I set this up, 5 minutes good. If you're not familiar with the stuff, sometimes using the 30 minutes a little bit better plan. Um, so, like I said, I got that initial bond. I probably could have tried to use a little super glue, but then I found out that instead of holding it, the best thing to do is just let the weight of it, once it was a little bit adhesed, let the weight of it um, kind of support itself, and that once it was a little tacky, where the glue was then tacky, or the epoxy was tacky, I was able to get it to stay just like this, so that it would that initial 5 minute, the little seam I put was able to dry. So what I'm going to do is try and fill these gaps here, along where there's a little bit of a gap from the crack. I'm going to get some in there, and one thing you always want to do with this stuff, use gloves. So I use nitrile gloves. You can buy these Amazon, eBay, Harbor Freight, probably Walmart. They're, you know, kind of pushed to like medical use. Is it if you get ones at a hardware store or a tool store like Harbor Freight, they'll be actually they're much nicer. They're thicker. They have um, better grip. I bought these when I was a police officer, kind of during the COVID, everything that was going on. I bought a few boxes of these less expensive ones because I was taking them on and off so much. For my garage, I actually have some really nice ones. But with this type where it's glue, I might go through a few pairs. Some of the less expensive ones are pretty good. So to make sure we don't get too much seep through, is that what I'm going to do is use that blue painter's tape whenever I end up being had pulled off as much tape as I need, I always do a little tab, so I fold over. If that's going to get in the way when I'm taping something, I'll rip that off, but here it's not because we can go over the edges. I'm going to get that seam down, and I'm going to rip the tape off. It tears real easy, and I'll go ahead probably wrap it a little bit up over the edges here, and then I'm going to try and press it down as well as I can. I'm going to use the most proper English that I can here. So I'm going to get it taped down. I'm going to try to get all the bubbles out. I'm going to be kind of gentle because the seam, it's not as much glue as I would have liked to get into the seam that I used to get that initial hold. Like I said, I have some of the extra mixing needles from previous sets where I used the whole set, the whole tube with one needle. So here's the one I did the initial seam with. I'll get the cap back off, so that's the protective cap. And so I'm going to go ahead and put the mixing needle on. When I am done using a portion where I'm going to pull the needle off, I try to draw back this just a hair, not too much. I don't want it pulling anything back from inside here where it's mixed, because then it'll freeze up the whole tube once it dries. So strange thing with these is to tighten it's counterclockwise to get it tightened on there, and to loosen it is clockwise. When I first open them up and pull them out, I do the same thing, just a tiny bit of pullback so it doesn't end up having the two-part epoxy squirt out of the nozzle. So now I have it in there. They take a little bit of force. You're pushing a pretty thick fluid. It's a gelatin fluid, and it's got to mix in the tube here. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. I'm going to fill, I don't know if you can see in the video, but it's pushing the two parts of the epoxy. I'm going to fill the holes with a generous amount. You'd have to check eBay, Amazon, what the stuff costs, but like I said, I buy it in bulk because I use it all the time. I love this stuff. It's makes a lot of jobs where I'm fixing something, repair. So it works the same way as like the heat glue, but without the heat. You don't need it. It generates its own heat to some extent. I would say is that it's a two-part compound. And what will happen is that when those are mixed properly, it will dry and create a very heavy bond. It is, for something like what we're doing here to fix your log, is a much better bond than the heat glue, because heat glue actually has, when it dries, has a lot more elasticity in it. It's kind of pliable, whereas two-part epoxy, it's gonna dry completely. It's gonna become a very hardened material once it dries. Now, with this, want to try and get it as neat as I can get it to look. Looks like the one hole up here I'll probably have to keep filling. Just because it's going into the empty space, and it's when it initially comes out, it is fluid enough that it'll start to fill the space, but that's good. It will help with the bond. Got to try and make sure as even as you can get the plunger for the needle to both sides. So you want to try and be real careful doing that. And I'm going to go a little bit over. And what that's going to give me the ability to do is I'll use the gloves while it's still fluid, and I will kind of spread it across the space. I'm going to put that on top of that cardboard, or I can, if I want to try and recycle the cardboard, I can put it into this plastic. And then, like I said, normally I'll draw that back a little bit, just a tiny bit, so that it doesn't go all the way back into the tube. You can kind of get any leftover out that edge. Another good thing to have around is paper towels. I actually have some here in the garage. So, like I said, I'm going to take my finger. I'm going to use the glove with the glove on, and I'm going to press very, very gently, getting the glue to even out so it's not really sticking out. And this is should be a clear to lightly hazy one. I don't think they really make a completely clear. It might leave a gloss appearance on the log. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead. I'll shut the video down. I'm going to pause it, and that way we can come back. I'll do a second video, show the other side, and then if I need anything else. But no point in video taping 5 minutes of this just settling. Is it may not even need to do the other side, but I feel like it'd probably be a good idea. So I'll go ahead and shut this off, but that's what I'm going to do to try and fix this piece. Hopefully it should create a durable enough bond that as long as it's not stepped on again, it should work.